bunch of things and focusing in on just one little thing. Sometimes it's seeing something far away and not really being able to see what it is, and you use something like binoculars to look and focus in on what that is. And focus can really help us with our faith. So to think about focus, I've got a game for you to play. It's called eyes, binoculars, or telescope. So when we do that, I'm going to ask you about something and how you think you should look at it. And if you think you should look with your eyes, point to your eyes, or with binoculars, do this for binoculars, or telescope, you do this. Okay? So, what if I said we're going to look at our hands? What would be the best way to look at our hands? Well, they're pretty close. So, you got any guesses? Eyes, that's right. The eyes. So, let's see. What about something that's really far away, like a deer? Like you see a deer out in the forest. How are you going to look at that? Eyes, binoculars, or telescope? Binoculars. Yeah, binoculars help you see stuff that's far off. All right, 2 more. What about, what if you wanted to see the moon, like really close, and see all the craters and the dips and things that are in the moon? What would you use? Well, you can kind of see it with your eyes, and you could probably see it better with binoculars, but you can see it the best with a big, long telescope that gets you right up close to it. Okay, last one. What would you use to see the air? We breathe it, right? But we can't see it with our eyes, and we can't see it with binoculars. We can't see it with a telescope. So how do we know it's there? Right? So what we need to focus on sometimes isn't something that we can see. We use faith. So what is faith? Faith is believing in something that you can't see. And we have plenty of examples in the Bible about faith. And in fact, I brought one with us. It happens to be our memory verse, and we'll talk about it later. But this comes from Hebrews 11, verse 1. It says, faith is being sure of what we hope for. It is being sure of what we do not see. That is what the people of long ago were praised for. And lucky for us, we've talked about some of those people already. Remember talking about Abraham? Abraham was really, really old. And God told him that he was going to have kids. He was going to have a son. But he was like 90 years old. Well, Abraham couldn't see that. He didn't have any reason to think that he was going to have a son, but he had faith that he could. And Noah, yeah, we know the story about Noah. Noah was told there was going to be a great big flood, right? Weren't any clouds in the sky. Didn't look like rain. There's no reason to believe that, but he had faith that God had told him what was true. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to learn about the stories of some of these people in the Bible who had great faith in God, even though they couldn't see him. Let's take a look.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how he created us and loves us so much that he made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Hebrews, chapters 11 and 12.
Gotta have a little faith, 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 faith. Keep the faith. Take a leap of faith. You know, a lot of people toss around the word faith lately. We say you can break the faith, or just take it all on blind faith. But true faith isn't blind at all. It's much more than just an inspirational word. True faith has to do with believing in all the things you can't see, because you start with what you can see. Now, we can't see God with our physical eyes, but we can see the stories of people who came before us. They lived in a broken world like we do, but they chose to follow God. They chose to trust his promise that one day he would send a rescuer that would make everything right again. The writer of Hebrews in the New Testament tells us about some of these men and women in God's story. People like Noah, people like Abraham.
Abraham.
When God called Abraham, he was already getting old. He and his wife Sarah didn't have kids.
Leave your country and your people. Leave your father's family. Go to the land I will show you. All nations on earth will be blessed because of you.
God was planning on sending his rescuer as one of Abraham's great, etc. grandchildren. But still, even though Abraham had God's promise, he still couldn't see the one God was sending. Still, Abraham went on a wild adventure, following God's call, and even his descendants, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, all chose faith in God. Moses, too, was called by God from the fiery heart of a burning bush. Even though he was raised by Pharaoh's daughter, he chose to stand with his own people and face Pharaoh's anger to win freedom. We read about it like this in the book of Hebrews.
Moses suffered shame because of Christ. He thought it of great value.
See, when you check out Hebrews, you discover this huge list of people who followed God by faith, so many that the writer just stops trying to list all of them. Oh, but we can't forget Israel's most important king, David.
Get up and anoint him. This is the one.
Even though God had promised David would be king, though, David spent years on the run from King Saul, fearing for his life. Still, he chose to trust God.
The Lord is my shepherd. He gives me everything I need.
Now, none of these people in the Old Testament could see with their eyes how God was going to save his people, but they could see how he was working in their lives, how their needs were being met. So they chose to believe in his greater plan. They chose faith.
Faith is being sure of what we hope for. It is being sure of what we do not see. That is what the people of long ago were praised for.
Now, here's where the story turns. In Hebrews, we discover that none of those people in the Old Testament received what God had promised here on earth.
That's because God had planned something better for us, so they would only be made perfect together with us.
God's plan includes all of us from the very beginning of creation. So at just the right moment, at the perfect point in time, God sent his rescuer, the hero, his very own son, Jesus. Jesus showed us how to live. He showed us what God was like, and he told us the most important thing.
If you love one another, everyone will know you are my disciples.
Love God, love others. It's the heart of the whole story. But then, Jesus was killed, and his friends thought the story was finished. Period. Dot. The end. Until God raised him back to life. Jesus has defeated death, and those who follow him can live with him forever. But how do you follow someone you can't see? Well, that brings us back to faith.
Let us keep looking to Jesus. He is the one who started this journey of faith, and he is the one who completes this journey of faith. He paid no attention to the shame of the cross. He suffered there because of the joy he was looking forward to. So think about him. Then you won't lose hope.
The early believers, Peter and John and other followers of Jesus, had seen him teach and heal. They saw him after God raised him to life. But after Jesus returned to heaven, the believers continued to live by faith.
We have to speak about the things we've seen and heard.
Because of what the new Christians in the early church had seen, they could believe in what they could not yet see, the end of the story, where God makes everything right. They kept the faith, and because they did, we can choose faith too.
Wow, those people had some big faith. God told them things that they couldn't see. They didn't know that any of that was going to happen, but even so, they had faith to believe that God knew what he was talking about and that he talked to them. They focused in on the one thing that really, really mattered, and that's what God said. That's why we talk about what's in the Bible. That's why we meet every week and do these things. It's so that we can focus in on what God says. And when we focus in, it helps our faith grow. It helps us believe in what he says, no matter what's going on around us. You know, some of these people who were in the Bible, they didn't have the best of times. You know, Abraham was all over the place. Noah had a family to think about. And he had everybody else telling him that he was crazy for doing it. Sometimes faith is really, really hard. But if we can just focus in on the right thing, what God says, it really helps us out. So let's think about our memory verse, which is that Hebrews memory verse that we've already talked about. So I'm going to read it. And this time, what I want y'all to do is when we get done, sit down with somebody in your house and go find it in the Bible and read it for yourself. Make sure it says something similar. Make sure it says the same thing. So here we go. Hebrews 11, ... 1. Faith is being sure of what we hope for. It is being sure of what we do not see. That is what the people of long ago were praised for. And the great thing about it is that the same faith that the people from long ago had, that we still say they're so great. They had this great faith. They believed. We can believe in the same thing, and we can believe in the same way. Guys, I hope you have a great week and a great rest of your Sunday morning.